And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will deliver a landmark speech to the U.S. Congress in Washington on Wednesday. In doing so, he will become the first foreign leader to address the full American Congress 4 times, just passing Winston Churchill. For more, let's speak to our foreign editor, Kethevane Gorjestani. Hello to you, Kethevane. Depending on which American politician you speak to, there's a lot of mixed reactions about Netanyahu's visit, isn't there?
Yes, and that starts pretty much at the White House, because we are expecting Benjamin Netanyahu to actually meet with Joe Biden, despite the upheaval in the Biden campaign and the fact that the U.S. president is still recovering from COVID. And that is very important in the sense that there's been a lot of tension between the two men. Probably the most tense relationship between any U.S. president and Israeli prime minister. Criticism about Israel's handling of the war in Gaza, frustration about some of the comments coming out of the Prime Minister of Israel. But it is important in the sense that Joe Biden is in that way showing his support for Israel, even though there is tension with the Prime Minister himself. Then if you look at Congress, of course, among Republicans, there is widespread support for both Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, and it is the Republicans who actually invited him to come and speak to Congress. When it comes to Democrats, things are much different. Long gone is the idea that support for Israel was a very strong bipartisan issue. Now there is really a growing group within the Democrats, specifically the more progressives, the younger Democratic lawmakers who are increasingly opposed not just to Benjamin Netanyahu, but also who have questions about the U.S.'s support, military support towards Israel. And there are dozens of Democrats who are expected to boycott the speech in Congress by Benjamin Netanyahu. And some of them are even planning on staging protests outside Congress. So you're really seeing those tensions there within the Democratic Party. And then there's the question of whether or not Benjamin Netanyahu is going to see or talk to Donald Trump while he's in the United States. It's not unheard of to have foreign leaders, when they're traveling in the U.S. ahead of a big election, to actually go and meet with the opponent of the sitting president to sort of see who could be in the White House in the next few months. But so far, no confirmation there. And there is some tension between the two men. Donald Trump is, of course, a huge supporter of Israel, but he's still not completely over the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu in 2020 was very quick to recognize and congratulate Joe Biden on his victory at the presidential election, and that didn't really sit well with Donald Trump. But Benjamin Netanyahu has been working hard to mend those personal relations with the former U.S. president, looking ahead, of course, to what could happen come November.
Yeah, and depending on whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump in the White House, there is another looming foreign policy issue, which would be drastically different depending on who is the president, but that's the war in Ukraine.
Absolutely. And when I was talking about foreign leaders starting to discuss the possibility of having Donald Trump come back to the White House, Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is one of those. He had a call with the former U.S. president on Friday, and it was interesting to see how the two men talked about that call after it happened. Donald Trump talked about the fact that he was going to do everything, and he promised to end the war. This is something that Volodymyr Zelensky did not mention at all, this idea of ending the war, because they definitely don't agree on what is implied in the idea of ending that war. And the Donald Trump presidency, if you listen to what Donald Trump has said, would not be great for Ukraine. Donald Trump has been very critical of the U.S.'s support for Ukraine. He has also hinted at the fact that Ukraine might have to cede some territory to Russia Russia in order to end the war. He said that if he had been president, Putin would never have invaded Ukraine. And he also, more broadly, you remember those comments about NATO allies who don't contribute their fair share, and how he would tell Vladimir Putin to do whatever the hell he wants with those NATO allies. And to add to that, you have the choice of his vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, who is definitely not going to go against Donald Trump on any of these elements. He was one of the leading Republicans in the opposition to blocking that package of aid, $1 billion package of aid for Ukraine earlier this year. He has said things like it's ridiculous that we're focused on that border in Ukraine when we should be focused on the one at home. He even said a couple of years ago at the start of the war, I gotta be honest with you, I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another. And even more recently, back in February, he said, I do not think that Putin is an existential threat to Europe. So yes, it's Donald Trump who sets foreign policy, but he's definitely not going to find in J.D. Vance someone who might talk to him and tell him to do things another way. This is someone with whom he's very much in line with when it comes to how to deal with Ukraine.
All right, Kethevane, thank you very much. Kethevane Gorjestani, our foreign editor.